parlando sempre di innovazione e l'ultimo tema che ha toccato Marcella, adesso ci spostiamo un attimo negli Stati Uniti. Quindi abbiamo parlato di pandemia e il nostro prossimo speaker è una persona che ci ha aiutato a livello globale a uscire da questa pandemia. Lui è canadese di origine, ha insegnato per molti anni ad Harvard e poi ha deciso di fare l'imprenditore, ma adesso ci facciamo raccontare da lui con le sue vive parole la sua storia. So if for everybody is okay, I will switch to English and I ask if Derrick is here with us. Yeah, Derrick Rossi was introduced to Padova to the wonderful chemical engineer Professoressa Elisa Cimetta that is here with us. So this gift is because of her. So a little applause. But I think it's not quite common to have the possibility to speak with such an interesting person. Welcome, Derrick Rossi. Can you hear us? Yeah?
Hi, Carlo. Yep. Nice
So,
to see you.
Benvenuto, welcome. So thank you very much for your time, and we are really happy to share this few minutes with you to ask you some questions regarding your story and the future of medicine. So I will start from the first question that is, we are pretty curious to understand how and when you came into the scientific discoveries that gave the hints, gave the light to the founding of Moderna. What happened?
Well, it's a long story, but it's a nice story. I'll try to make it short. First, greetings, everybody. Happy to be joining you today. And you would think with a last name like Rossi that I would be speaking Italian, but alas, my parents were from Malta and I was raised in Canada, so not a word of Italian I speak, so apologies. Our entree into mRNA science was actually in a very roundabout way. We were working on a project related to stem cell biology in my lab at Harvard Medical School. And it honestly was a side project because mostly what we were working on was blood-forming stem cells. But we had this idea of, we were inspired by Shinya Yamanaka's discovery, which of course goes on to win the Nobel Prize. And I'm not going to explain it for a bunch of non-scientists. I suspect many of you are, but let's just say it was a side project unrelated to mRNA science, but we decided to apply mRNA to tackle a particular challenge that we wish to face in the lab. And it took a couple of years, about 3, for us to really sort of, not only master the technology, but, do a lot of biology related to this side project. But I got the idea of starting an mRNA therapeutics company, at about the point that we started to express the very first protein successfully with mRNA. We called it modified mRNA, mod-RNA, which turned into Moderna. And we found, within weeks, we could express many hundreds of therapeutic proteins. And to me, this was a game changer because if you can intervene with one of the key molecules of life, DNA makes mRNA, makes protein, makes life, also makes disease, then we imagine that we could intervene in so many different clinical settings. So I started to hatch the idea of founding a company around 2009. And then in early 2010, I started to seek out investment, and then, which I got relatively easily, raised a small amount of capital, about $2.5 million from venture capital and from an angel investor. And then the company was launched in 2010.
That's amazing, Derrick. Something that really impressed me is how in USA people go big or go home. It's really interesting to see a professor of one of the, maybe the best university in the world that decided to resign to follow a vision, an entrepreneurial vision that was at that time, 2014, if I'm not wrong, absolutely not so clear or so successful as it was. And of course, thank you also to your research, changed completely the world and help us to exit from a really, really tough situation. So this is, from my point of view, amazing. Before you, Marcello Riggi give a keynote talk and she explained us how is the future of digital pharma. So I want to ask you the same question, how you see the future of these advanced pharmas, this technological solution, where we are going?
Well, in terms of digital pharma, is that what you mean?
No, I was talking about
just in general, just pharma in general.
In general, yeah.
Okay, well, already the pharma model has changed considerably over the past 15 to 20 years, where pharma used to have large R&D, research and development budgets and large R&D departments. But then biotechs emerged, first starting in the 1980s, but really, turning into a major industry unto themselves over the past 20 years. 15. And so the model for pharma has moved from having its own R&D expenditures and people into the idea of having biotech do much of the discovery and sort of bringing it into clinical trials for phase 1, phase 2. And then pharma uses its resource now to either license or partner with or purchase the biotech company. So that model is really what is the main driver of new biomedical innovation right now. And it makes sense because biotech is lean and nimble and focused and can really turn on a dime and act on the data, whereas big pharma is big and cumbersome and less able to sort of, follow the data and turn on a dime. So that model is established, I think, and it's particularly vibrant in the Boston-Cambridge area, so much so that large pharma has moved to town, and essentially all of the major pharma companies have large buildings here. And the reason is that they want to be close to the biotech innovation hub of the planet, which is Boston, Cambridge. But there are other innovation hubs around the planet, South San Francisco and even San Diego and other places outside of the US, although I would say that the US is probably the leader in this. So that's part of the ecosystem as well, that pharma moves to proximity of biotech so that they can see what they're doing, they can meet with them regularly, they can form partnerships, they can invest wisely, and then ultimately purchase programs or companies. So I would say, you asked me what's the future. That's kind of the current. So what's the future? Well, I don't have a looking glass, of course. When I think about the future of biomedicine, I'm thinking largely around therapeutic paradigms. So mRNA is a therapeutic paradigm, or gene editing is a therapeutic paradigm, or gene therapy is a therapeutic paradigm. But the one thing that I will say is coming unto its own now is big data and AI, to use the power of AI to hopefully uncloud the cloudiness of biological data. So biological data and patient data is noisy by definition because it comes from many individuals and it's gathered, from sites all over the world. But and to a normal researcher, when you look at messy data, it's very hard to pull out true actionable targets and or strategies. Whereas AI has the ability to do that because it can process large data in ways that humans can't. So you asked me about the future. I think the future is going to be largely, or not largely, but anyhow, to some extent, biomedical research, particularly in the biologic sciences, will have an AI-driven component with the idea of reducing the noise of, that we humans are noisy data creatures, to really get to actionable therapies.
Thank you, Derrick. This is really interesting. Again, it's interesting to see how the paradigm is changing in R&D in pharma, as you said. So the importance to have this biotech. Of course, I think huge investment in new technology and new research like AI. This is something that we are in late, not only in Italy, but let me say in Europe. USA and China are more than one step ahead of us. This is something that we really need to run, because we will lose a really, really important trade regarding that. So you said that Boston is the place to be. What do you think makes a local environment, or gives a local environment a competitive advantage to foster and support such ideas and entrepreneurial activities? Why do you think this happened there, and it's more difficult to happen maybe in Europe, in Italy, even if we have some interesting districts also in our country, on a different scale, of course?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So it's basically what are all the elements into making this perfect biotech ecosystem? And it's actually it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long time in the farming. Actually, it's many decades. And I will say, so I'm going to highlight maybe 5 or 6 really of the key ingredients. But it starts with really top-notch academic institutions, because ultimately, and again, I'm talking about biomedical science, but also engineering science and the others, really the drivers of the cutting edge drivers of new innovation is academia, almost always. So in Boston, Cambridge, there's Harvard on one side of the Charles River, there's MIT on the other side of the Charles, plus actually 70 other universities, but those are the two that everybody knows about, MIT and Harvard. So that's important. But there are many cities around the planet that have great universities. So this is not something unique to Boston, Cambridge, but it's the important first element. One of the other things that's needed typically is for at least one sort of company to have emerged from a nascent innovation center to have great success. So to then become something called an anchor company. And so that happened in Boston, Cambridge with Genzyme in the 1980s. It happened in South San Francisco with Genentech, which was eventually purchased by Roche. Vertex also here has been around for a long time, Biogen. So these anchor companies are really important because they, a lot of scientists and all of the sort of executive branch of biotech is trained in these places. So they learn how biotech is done and they become expert at it. And honestly, there are many hundreds of biotech companies in Boston, Cambridge now. And honestly, they're staffed with people that used to work on a company on this block and, take a career step 3 blocks away, honest to God, in the same neighborhood. Their commute doesn't even have to change. And then they move 2 blocks to the north. I mean, there's such a density, and it's really important for nurturing the expertise that's needed for new companies. So basically, new companies, you populate them with people that have come through the process before and quote unquote have seen the movie before. So that's really important. So expertise, basically.
Thank you, Dan.
Then of course, so there's more.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I know, I told you it's
No, go ahead.
I tend to talk too much, Carlos, sorry. Investment capital. And this is something that's a little bit unique to America. I'm Canadian myself, and I talk to Canada at all times about, making sort of biotech innovation hubs in Canada. But the one thing is true is that, nobody has an appetite for risk reward like Americans do somehow. So Americans are prepared to risk a lot of money. And typically the model is you place many bets on different companies, and that, 70% or something like that are going to fail, and maybe 20% will be, recoup costs, but, maybe 5 or 10% or 2% will knock it out of the park and make the investment all worthwhile. So the risk for investment, the investment risk has to be there if you're talking about biotech innovation. And of course, then the promise of reward has to be there as well. So that's the money part. Then there's, IP experts. It's very rich in IP experts here, and lawyers that are versed in the biotech space. And we already talked about Pharma coming and making buildings, to be close to the hub, to interact with the biotech companies, and hopefully when they see good looking data, purchase the assets, because that, of course, represents these 5% of cases where the ball is knocked out of the park. I'm sorry, that's a bit of an American analogy in baseball. If you hit a home run, you hit it really far, and that's what everybody wants, is a home run in terms of their monetary investment. Those are some of the elements.
Yeah, I think we are a little bit far, but of course, as a local area of the world, we have a lot to do to increase and to make our environment, our ecosystem, a better ecosystem for this to grow. We had two interesting startups. One is Moveo with Fausto Panizzolo, and another is Francesca Peggione with FF Cosmetics. So I hope that they will be inspired by your amazing story. And of course, I'm sure that all the audience that is listening to you has been inspired at least as much as I have been. So Derrick, I have just the last question. When will you come to Padova again? Now you have to say it, because it's time for you to come back. When we will have the pleasure to have you in our beautiful city?
Well, as you know, I was just there 2 weeks ago, or whenever it was, and we took a wonderful. We had a wonderful evening on your boat, and a wonderful dinner. I actually am coming back to Venice in like a week and a half, but I think I'm only coming in for a day or two, and I don't even think I'll make it to Padova. But at least I'm coming back to Venice. But yeah, I've got some invites to come back to Padova, so I loved it there. So invite me and I'll come.
Perfect. Everybody listen to that. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks all. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Derrick. Thank you for your time. See you next time in Padova. Bye-bye. Thank you. Grazie.
Ciao. Bye.
Ciao. Ciao.